Just a split second, I'm outside my body. But this second experience is so different from the first. And now I'm just tumbling through darkness. So it's more like a Star Wars movie. Like I'm traveling through space as a soul. And I get to this place that I call the mid station only because I knew that there were levels.
My guest today is Dr. Lotte Valentin, a physician, a medical medium, an ancestral healer, and an author of Med School After Menopause. And she survived two near-death experiences that gave her psychic abilities, and she's here to talk to us about that today. Welcome, Dr. Lottie.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. My pleasure.
So could you firstly just give us a little bit of background about what it was like for you growing up, and then why don't we jump into your NDEs?
Yeah, so I was actually born and raised in Sweden, which is in Scandinavia or Northern Europe, just underneath the Arctic Pole. The reindeer lives in my country. Santa Claus, right? So growing up in Sweden was obviously different because it's in Europe. My father was a physician. I had 3 older brothers, and my mom went back to work when I was 12 and worked as like a hospital floor administrator. So I was always surrounded by medicine growing up. All my parents' friends were all back then in the because I'm born in the 1950s. So I grew up in the 1960s, and back then it was unusual for women to be doctors. The women tended to be nurses. So all my parents' friends, the man was the physician and their wives were nurses. So it's such a classic setup, almost sounds like a movie. So I was always surrounded by medicine. It was always medicine was the number one conversation in my house. So growing up around that, I always knew I wanted to be a doctor. And I would tell my dad, when I grow up, I'm going to be a doctor. And he would look at me and say, no, don't be a doctor, be a nurse. And it was just a time period that I grew up in the 1960s. So anyway, then I grew up, went to high school. The advisors in school said, oh, you're really good in the science subjects. You should do the science major because we actually major in high school. So when you get out of high school, you go straight to medical school, straight to law school. There is no 4 year of college required before you go. We do a lot of those prereqs in high school. And so when you go to high school in Sweden, you can come out of that being like a daycare provider or an automobile, like a mechanic. So we get a lot of training in high school compared to here in the United States.
Wow.
Everybody sort of requires go straight to college and then you get to decide what to do. So you're much younger when you go into starting med school over there. Anyway, I didn't go the science line because I looked at the other kids in my class and there were maybe 2 or 3 girls that, young ladies that were going to go the science line. And I said, I am not going to have any friends if I do that in high school. Being a teenager, boyfriends were much more important and having friends were much more important. So I majored in languages and business. And then I met an American who was an exchange student in my high school. And I ended up marrying that man about 3 years later. So I moved to the United States when I was 21. And I had started at Stockholm's University and I was studying economics, which I thought was terribly boring because this wasn't who I was, right? So I studied economics and then I went to the United States and I worked my first year here in the United States. And I worked as the secretary at the biomedical engineering department at Boston University. And I was typing research papers all day long for these professors that were doing research. I had no idea what I was typing. It was just words, right? So I'm just typing along. And I remember asking the professor, what kind of pig is a guinea pig that has long hair? Because I thought it was a real pig. I had never heard the word guinea pig. That's not a word you learn in an English class, right? So, they had so many laughs because I never knew what it was I was actually typing. And then they convinced me I should go to Boston University. And they said, the professors there said, oh, you have such a good knack for computers. You should be an engineer. And I said, no, I don't want to be an engineer. And then again, I said, maybe I should follow my dad's advice and be a nurse. But the language barrier was so great. I didn't think I could handle those science classes. So again, I major in business. I major in business and computer science. And then I graduate and I work for IBM as a programmer and systems analyst. So, and I was a complete atheist. I didn't believe in anything. I didn't believe in angels, the spirit world, life after death. That was just not even part of my vocabulary. I didn't, a mediumship. I would have laughed if somebody said, let's communicate with the spirit world and, I'm going to connect, with with my loved ones in the spirit world. I would have laughed at them and said, you're crazy. Like, that is impossible. That can't be. So I was very scientific, very logical. And so here I am working as a programmer. And then I took a leave of absence because my husband's job took us to California and we had our first child. And so then I was at home and then I had a second child. And then I had a third child. And that's when life really changed. And that's when I had the near death experience. So I could tell you that story if you want me to continue. I don't know if you had any questions about anything so far.
No, that's good. Yeah, but go ahead. Let's hear about
All
the
right.
first NDE.
So then I had two children, two boys already. So they were 6 and 3.5 at this point. And I was pregnant again. And I gave birth to a baby girl, which was not a normal birth in itself. So we lived in California at the time in Huntington Beach. And I gave birth in the eastern part. If people know where Disneyland is, it's in Anaheim, California. And in the eastern part of that city, Anaheim, that kind of borders the desert. And that's where the hospital was where I gave birth. So I'm contracting about 3 minutes apart. So the baby's, my second baby had been born in like 2 hours. So as soon as I had a contraction, we headed to the hospital. And I was already, close to delivering that baby, and a 7.4 earthquake hits.
Whoa.
So I'm lying on this table. Luckily, not many people have heard of this earthquake because it was centered in the desert. But this hospital was literally the last building before the desert. And it was a new hospital. So it was built on rollers. And so that building, it just rolls right back and forth because to take the the impact of the earthquake. So I'm lying on this birthing table in the birthing unit, and the midwife, the nurse, my husband, everybody's just leaning over me. I would have flown off the table because that's how much that building shook. And just, we're just petrified that this is the moment I'm going to die. That's what I thought, because there were these windows all the way from the floor to the ceiling, and then all those ceiling tiles that, are common. And I said, this is it. Like, these windows are going to cave in, or the ceiling tiles are going to cave in, and we're just going to be buried in this rubble as everything collapses. So the building just rolled and rolled. We lose all the electricity, and it stops. And we're all just, oh my God, we're still here. And it's just dead silence. We hear the generators kick in, and we have the light of like a night light that you have in the bathroom at night. That was the lighting now. Because this was at, early in the morning, maybe 5 o'clock in the morning or something. And so it was dark still outside. And then my contractions actually stopped, because when you are, if you're in the jungle and that lion is coming to eat you, and you're about ready to give birth, you're going to stop giving birth, get yourself to safety, and then give birth, because it's just, instincts. All animals will do that, and things will just stop, and you get yourself to safety. So my labor actually stopped, and then about half an hour later, it started back up as I started, saying, okay, we're okay. Gave birth to my daughter, and we had a second earthquake hit, and that was a 7.2.
Whoa.
And we're like, okay, well, this is really bad, but it's not as bad as the first one. So we know it's okay. It can get worse, or it can get a little better, right? And then they finally gave me, the baby to hold. And as soon as they gave me the baby, I'm just like leaning backwards, yelling for my husband, take the baby, take the baby. And I was in this excruciating pain. And then there was all these blood clots that came out, and they started massaging my uterus. And today I'm thinking, there's not much they could do. They were operating on generators at this point. So they put an IV in, and that helped contract the uterus down. And then I stayed an extra day in the hospital. So after 48 hours, they said, well, it looks good. It looks like the bleeding has slowed way down. It looks like a normal flow, like postpartum. and we're going to send you on your way. So they sent me home, and then I had all these pain. I mean, imagine swallowing a bowling ball, and it's just this very kind of heaviness, and it would just hurt so much, like down my legs. And I would constantly have to sit down. Anytime I picked up the baby, it was so much pain. And I'm thinking, why is this birth so different? I mean, I did hemorrhage afterwards, but that stopped, and I couldn't figure that out. Well, then about 10 days later, my friends are having a baby shower for me in the park because I had a girl and I had two boys before, and they were all excited. They were getting give me all these girly clothes and everything. So I get there, and I feel like I have to use the restroom. So I take my kids with me. We go to the restroom, and this enormous blood clot comes out. I mean, it's like
Oh,
the size of the baby's head. I mean, it's just huge. And I'm looking at that in the toilet, going,
oh my
this is not
God.
good. This is not normal. So I take my kids, I run back, tell my friend, I have to leave right now. Something really is really, really wrong. So I drove home, which was only about 5 minutes from this park. My parents were there from Sweden visiting to help with the kids and everything. So I tell them what happened, and they call my husband. He comes home. We go to the ER. I get to the ER. They come in, they do a manual inspection, and they say, well, everything seems fine now. There's not much blood coming out. Keep me there for 2 or 3 hours. And they say, well, it looks good. We're going to send you on your way. Could have been a second lining that came out. We're at home next day. I go to the bathroom. It's like 5 or 6 in the afternoon. Same thing happens again. And my husband calls the hospital, and I'm yelling at him lying on the bed. I am not going. The bleeding stopped. They're not going to do anything. It's pointless. So they decided I should see the doctor the next morning in Huntington Beach, where we lived in California. Next morning, it's Friday morning. I go to the doctor. It's like 10 o'clock in the morning. Same thing. Manual inspection. Well, it doesn't look like you're bleeding that much now, but, no blood work, no ultrasound, nothing. Just a visual inspection saying, doesn't look like much is happening. Sent me on my way. I go home. Same thing happens again, 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Another huge blood clot comes out. So we said, all right, well, this is the third day this is happening. Something is definitely wrong. So we went back to the ER. Same thing. Doctor comes in, says, well, nothing much seems to be happening now, and leaves me there for observation. We'll keep you here for 2 or 3 hours. We'll see if anything happens. So I'm just lying on this table, doors closed. I don't have a bell to ring. This is 1992. And I start bleeding. So I'm thinking, I'm finally bleeding. I'm in the hospital. They're going to figure out something is wrong. So I'm lying there, not thinking much about it. I'm like, well, this is the fourth day I'm bleeding now. So, and then a nurse comes in to check on me. I swear the spirit world sent her, because the timing is, had she been there a minute or two later, I probably would have died. I mean, it comes down to seconds. So she comes in, she opens the door, and she has this, terror look on her face, like, it's like her jaw is on the floor. And she's just, oh my gosh. And I can hear the call on the loudspeaker, OBGYN, stat to the ER. So I'm thinking, wow, this is good. Finally, they figured out something, is wrong with me. So she cleans up everything, puts new paper down. This middle-aged doctor comes literally running full speed with a younger physician in tow, which is probably the resident. And I'm thinking, I finally get a doctor that's middle-aged. He's been around the block. He's going to know what to do. And he did, because he saved my life. So again, we do another manual inspection. So they said, all right, let's take a look, see what's happening. Another huge blood clot comes out. So this is the fifth time I'm hemorrhaging in 3 days, right? I've lost so much blood now. So I try to sit up and tell this doctor, I don't feel too good. So he knew exactly what had happened, because, when he came in, he said, how much have you been bleeding? And I said, well, I've been bleeding since Wednesday. This is my third day that this is happening. So he knew I had lost a lot of blood. So as soon as I said, I don't feel good, he just pushed me down on the table, the whole room filled with staff, nurses, and he started tipping the table backwards. My head goes towards the floor. My feet goes up in the air. And I got a nurse on my right that's got the blood pressure cuff, and she's quoting my blood pressure as it's dropping. And I got a nurse on my left trying to place the IV that is going to save my life, right? And I'm lying at this table. I feel like I jumped out of an airplane, and I'm just doing a free fall. And it's probably my blood pressure dropping, right? So I just feel like I'm falling through space at this point. And I'm thinking, wow, what's taking her so long? Why can't she get that IV in? But the veins are collapsing because once you go into shock, your veins collapse. And when you go to the ER today, now they often place an IV with just, water, basically, body water. And it's so they have access to the vein, right? So now they're already in your vein. If something goes south when you're in the ER, now they can just inject because you have a port now into your vein. But back in 92, they obviously didn't do that because they waited until you were almost dead to place that IV. So I'm lying on this bed going, wow, what's taking her so long? Why can't she get that IV in? And as I'm thinking that, the nurse on my right yells, 50 over 15, hurry. I mean,
Ooh,
at this point, I
it's slow.
barely have a pressure to support the heart, right? And then it just keeps falling. And it was shortly after she said that I knew that I was dying. And that was very different from that earthquake experience, right? Or I've been in an airplane that also fell out of the air. But that is very different from the thought of thinking, oh my gosh, this is it. I'm going to die, right? And a lot of people have been in these scenarios. You're almost in a car accident and then you can somehow get out of it, right? You can almost see your life flashing before your eyes. This was very different because it wasn't knowing that I was dying. I knew that I was dying at that point. And the atheist that I was, what do I do? I said, well, if there is a God, this is my chance. So I said, then, oh God, please save me. I have 3 children under the age of 6 and they need a mother. I was thinking my husband can never do this. Like there's no way he can raise 3 kids. So I just pleaded with God to save me. And it was shortly after that, I just got pulled out of my body. So then I find myself floating, like in the middle of the room, kind of above my body. And the first thing I'm thinking is, wow, how can I be outside my body and still be me? Right? That's the first thing. So you are still you, and you know that you belong to that body down there. Like, oh, that's me down there, right? And I didn't. Some people turn around and they see themselves on the table. I didn't see myself on the table. I'm just kind of like out there. But I know I belong to the body. It's almost like people talk about the silver cord and things like that. It's almost like you're on a string, right? Because there is this knowing you belong to the body. But while I'm outside my body, first of all, it's this complete peace. And, you just feel, wow, this is so nice. There's no pain. There's nothing. You're just kind of there. But also, there was a knowing that there was no time in that state and that I could access any information, past, present, and future. There was no time. And it drove me crazy for years trying to figure out why is there no time over there? And then as quickly as I had gotten sucked out of my body, I get sucked back in. And don't even have words for it. So then the next day, of course, they keep me in the hospital and I'm hooked up to all this stuff. And the next morning, the nurse comes in and she says, oh, did anything unusual happen yesterday, in the ER? And I said, no, nothing at all. I was petrified. I figured if I tell her what I had experienced, they're going to lock me up in the psych ward. I'm never going to see my children. So I was just, no, because I didn't believe in any of it, but I still had that experience. I'm wondering, what is this? Was that my brain hallucinating or what was that? So I'm lying in this hospital bed. And then I hear my sister-in-law, who had passed away about 10 days earlier, and I hear her. She's in the left corner on my ceiling, and she says, everything's going to be okay. And I'm just lying there thinking, okay, yesterday I thought I left my body and I had this whole experience, and now I think I hear my sister-in-law. Like, what is happening? And it wasn't until my mother-in-law came to visit. I didn't even tell my parents. I didn't tell my husband. I figured everybody, they're going to think I'm crazy. So I couldn't even tell anyone. And then my parents kept changing their ticket. They stayed for another 3 or 4 weeks. I just slept because of the shock and having too little blood. And then my mother-in-law came, and I call her my earthly spirit guide. And she was very spiritual. And she said, what is going on with you? And I told her about the experience. And she said, oh, what you had it's called a near-death experience. And she went out and she got the book by Raymond Moody, Life After Life.
Yep.
And so then I started understanding that this was some kind of experience that other people had had. So at least I didn't feel as kooky now. And then, over the years, she helped me, understand that there is life after death and all these other things. So then I got really sick, and it took me 6 months to, well, after 6 months. So my daughter was born in June. By that Christmas, we all got pneumonia, and I didn't get a blood transfusion. So the first thing they wanted to do was give me a blood transfusion. And I'm looking at the doctor in the ER, and I turned my head, and he said, so he just yells, "Don't move," because he was so afraid I was going to go back into shock. And he said, "I'm going to have to give you a blood transfusion." And I look at him and I say, "Do you have to give me a blood transfusion?" And he said, "Why don't you want one? Do you have like a religious belief that prevents you from taking a blood transfusion?" And I said, "No, but everybody that gets a blood transfusion gets AIDS because it was that big AIDS
Mm.
epidemic, and we didn't have any way of testing the blood back then." I said, "I have 3 kids under the age of 6. I was young. I was, 34 years old. I was in perfect health otherwise. I don't wanna wake up, 6 years from now when with 3 kids say having AIDS." So he said, "Okay, we'll see what we can do. You're young and very healthy." I just studied nutrition. I had a nutrition degree. So I was like super healthy. We didn't even have white sugar in the house. It was that crazy. So I'm so he said, "All right, I'm gonna give you some supplements. We're gonna give you some medication, make sure the bleeding stops and inflammation or, infection and all that." And so he said, "It's gonna take you a little bit of time, but you're making blood quickly." They kept me an extra day in the hospital and said, it seems to be working, and you're not going to feel too good for the next 3 months or so. And I basically just slept. I mean, that's what I'm told. I just slept a lot, and I was freezing. I had my hands and feet were ice cold under a wool blanket in June, July in California. So,
Wow.
I had like no blood, and I couldn't keep my head on a pillow because my head would be pounding because there was so little blood in my body. And I was so dizzy, I couldn't walk from the bed to the living room without passing out. I would, everything would just sort of blacken by, taking 20 steps,
Wow.
just throw myself on the sofa to get into the next room so I could at least talk to people now and then. So after 6 months, everybody got the flu. And my husband was in a new job. And here in the United States, we have to wait 3 months for the insurance unless we want to pay some astronomical amount, which you can't when you're young and you have 3 children, you're in your 30s, you can afford that, right? So, many times you just wait. And my husband kept saying, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" Like, I said, "Yes, I'm getting better. I'm sitting up now. Like, just take this new job." Well, he ended up taking 3 new jobs that year because
Oh,
right when this whole birth happened, his company got sold, and he was like a regional manager. Everybody got laid off from top to bottom. And so he just had to take the first best job. It's not like you have a lot of savings when you're in your early 30s and have 3 young children. So he took the best job he could. And then 3 months later, when we were just about to get insurance, he would get another job offer and then he would take that job. So that whole year, the entire year, we had no insurance that first year. So at Christmas, we all got sick. We went to a walk in clinic. Everybody had like pneumonia and the flu, ear infections. We all got antibiotics. And then 8 days after being on antibiotics, everybody was well again. My boys, my husband, I was even sicker. So I go back to the walking clinic and they said, "Wow, weren't you just here?" And I said, "Yeah, like 8 days ago." And they said, "All right, well, something is not right with you. So we're going to check your blood." So they come in, they do a blood test. They come back in. I'm not lying and I'm there forever. And they come back in and they say, "All right, do you have leukemia or AIDS? You have like no immune system at all. Like it's not, you don't have any white blood cells."
wow.
And I said, "Well, the good news is I don't have AIDS because I refused the blood transfusion, but something happened with the bone marrow. And so I wasn't making blood. So people can get this thing. It's called idiopathic aplastic anemia. And it's when the bone marrow gets suppressed and you're not making, platelets or white blood cells, red blood cells, everything gets suppressed." So they said, "All right, well, you have no immune system. You have to go to the ER." And I said, "I am not going to the ER." So they said, "Well, you can die if you don't go." And I said, "Okay, I'll promise I will go if I get worse. Any smidge of being worse, I will go." So they sent me home with, steroids, and they injected me with antibiotics and who knows what, and sent me home. They called the next day and said, "How are you doing?" And I said, "I'm a little bit better." So they said, "Okay, good." And I managed to come out of that. And then 2 months later, now I start bruising. So now it's May. In May, so it's 11 months after I gave birth. I bump into the baby's changing table and something that would give you a bruise of like a small coin. I had a bruise that spanned my entire hip. It was
Oh,
purple. And so, did I understand that something was wrong after growing up in a household of my father always talking about medicine? Yes, of course I did. I understood what was going on. And so I said, all right, I'm going to have, and I was getting pneumonia again. And it's May. Nobody gets pneumonia unless they have an underlying condition. So I get myself to this private doctor. We still didn't have insurance. And I get there and he's listening to my lungs. And then he sees the big bruise and jumps in front of me. He looks at me and he said, how did you get this bruise? And I said, I bumped into the baby's changing table. And he doesn't believe me. He thinks that my husband's beating me now. So luckily I had all my kids with me and he raises the shirt and all my kids and says, okay, I believe you. And I said, look, I'm telling you the truth. My father was a physician. This is what happened to me, but we're getting insurance July 1st. I only have 6 weeks to go. And I said, I am so much better now than I was 6 months ago because I put my children in the car and I drove myself here to get here to see you. So, of course, he gives me all the labs, which I don't do because if I had done those labs, I would have had a pre existing condition, which means I wouldn't get insurance July 1st. And I said, all right, well, I have the labs. And I just took all the medication. And again, I managed to come out of it. But what happened was that, whole bone marrow suppression that lasted for a couple of years. And this is how my second near death experience comes about. So during this whole time, I'm really sick. My watch has stopped. We can talk about that later. And how you have this electrical interference. And I hear the spirit world talking. So 2 years later, I every day I have this issue, right? I can't even stand up to cook for my kids. I have a stool in the kitchen. I remember my 90-year-old grandmother had this stool in the kitchen so she wouldn't have to stand up. So I got this stool so I could sit down because making pancakes would take too long. I would pass out. So I could sit and flip the pancakes. So, and I had this feeling that the soul was always trying to leave, right? Just like during my near death experience. And every day, several times a day, I would be, nope, we're not leaving. I'm going to hold on to you. Like come back in the body. And I would sit down, put my head down, get some more blood flow going. And many times in the middle of the night, I would wake up and have that, pounding head, take my head off the pillow because I was just blood deficient, right? I didn't have enough blood that going through my system. So 2 years later, same thing happens. And, it probably doesn't take much because when you already doesn't have that amount of blood, right? So your blood is, keeping your blood pressure high. So people, for example, who have POTS, the postural orthostatic tachycardia, so they bend over, they come up too quickly, they get dizzy. It's very common, especially after the pandemic. We see a lot more people with that. And many times you just need more salt, you need more fluids, you need more electrolytes so that you can keep that blood pressure high so you don't pass out. Well, I didn't have any of knowledge about anything back then. So I was constantly, on the verge of passing out and constantly had to sit down. So, I mean, if all it would take is for me to be dehydrated that day to have another near death experience because I already was deficient in the blood because of the bone marrow issue. So here I am in the middle of the night. And I always joke that they saved me too quickly the first time. So I didn't get the full effect. I didn't have a course correction for my life path. So let's do it. Let's have her have another near death experience so we can really get her on track. So here I am in the middle of the night, which happened often. I wake up, my head is pounding, I feel all lightheaded, feel like my soul is leaving, take my head off the pillow, and I just, again, just a split second, I'm outside my body. But this second experience is so different from the first. And now I'm just tumbling through darkness. So it's more like a Star Wars movie. Like I'm traveling through space as a soul. And I get to this place that I call the mid station only because I knew that there were levels. So there were levels above me and levels below me. It's like you go into a skyscraper that has 100 floors and you say, oh, I need to go to floor 50. You get off at floor 50. You know there are floors above you and floors below you. You're not seeing them. But it was that kind of a sensation that I was at this mid station. And as I get to this place, I'm just in a soul, like I don't have a body, right? I'm just in a soul. And I hear the most beautiful music. But you can't make this music on earth. And I tried. I sat at that synthesizer for days. with over 200 sounds. Is there any sound that sounds remotely similar to the sound I heard? That you can't make this music on earth because it's more beautiful than that. So I hear this incredibly beautiful music and I'm thinking, where is this music coming from? And so I look to my right and I see this little log cabin. And I always laugh. It looks like a Swedish sauna, like the things we see. But that's what I see. I see this little log cabin. So I look at it and I open the door and I look inside, but it's empty. It's like, wow, that's so strange. So I look to my left and I see another log cabin. And it looks just like the one on the right. It's like a mirror image. So I opened that cabin and I was like, wow, it's empty. And still hear the music, but then I become aware of the light. So this bright white light. The best description I have is if you take like a spotlight, like a stadium spotlight, and shine it through fog, right? So it's this kind of, you're just immersed in this bright white light, but it's coming from behind me. So as I'm turning around now, and face the light, there is an outline of angels in this bright white light, and the music is coming from the angels. And I'm completely aware. I'm like, I'm looking at angels, but I don't believe in angels, right? So I'm very aware of it. So why am I seeing things that I don't even believe in, right? So the music is coming from the angels, but then there is this awareness, this light that is the divine source. That we come from the light. We are light. We carry the light within us. We return to the light when we go on, when we leave this earthly realm. But we come from that. That is the divine source. You can call it anything. I call it divine source because as soon as you label it, God, you get stuck with the religious dogma, right? People wrote the Bible. God
Yep.
did not write the Bible, or divine source did not write the Bible. There were people that decided what should be in the Bible or any other religious text on the earth. And, if you go back in the day, we had all these goddesses and the divine feminine. Well, then we got Christianity and we got rid of all the goddesses and we all became, men. So depend, if you do the research on that, I'm not an expert on that at all, but it really clearly, you can see that you can't label it with a religious name. So that is divine source. But then I become aware of two spirit, call them the spirit guides. There's one on my right and one diagonally to the left in front of me. And they're talking to each other, but I can hear them. So the one on my right says, oh, what is she doing here? She can't be here. She has to go back. And I'm like, no, wait a second. It's been 2 years and I'm still trying to process my first near-death experience, right? So I'm saying, no, wait a second. How can I be outside my body and still be me? How does this work? And the spirit guide on my left says, well, if I showed you, right, you're not going to remember because there's something about what we get to remember. I think there's some kind of control mechanism. So then all of a sudden, it's like I'm standing on the moon. Imagine just a movie screen just appear in front of you, or, it's just all of a sudden you just see things. And I see the earth as if I'm standing on the moon looking down on earth. But then around the earth, I called it, so this is, 1994. We didn't have internet barely back then. I call it the silvery, glittery fishnet. So it was this kind of diamond shaped, silvery, sparkly, glittery net around the earth. And I call it the fishnet because I grew up in Sweden and there is, the archipelago in Sweden with over 20,000 islands. And so I spent my summers on an island in the archipelago with no electricity, no running water. And I would row the boat for my grandmother as she laid fish nets in the ocean and would catch fish for the family to eat. So early in that early morning sun, as I'm rowing, like 7, 8 years old, rowing this boat, and she lifted these fish nets out of the water. They're kind of diamond shaped. But when you have the water droplets on that, it sort of shimmers and sparkles in this morning sunlight. So I'm looking at this, I feel like I'm standing on the moon looking down on earth. So to me, it looks like the sparkling fishnet because now you can Google it and say grid around the earth and all these images come up. But we didn't have that then. And I combed the San Francisco library for any information on this, could not find it. And so anyway, so here I am. And he says, everything on earth is connected to each other, but everything on earth is connected up to this grid. And with that information, I got sent back. And so all these years later, so that was 1994, right? It's since the past 3 years, maybe, like since about 2020, it all makes sense. So that's how long it's taken to put all that little message to understand what that really meant. What is the grid? How does it work? How are we interconnected to each other? Right now we have more knowledge about that and quantum physics and how that all and how we are actually all connected to each other. So that was my near death experience in a nutshell. I know it's a
All
long
right.
story.
In your first NDE, your deceased sister-in-law spoke to you. It was who had died 10 days before. Was that when you started hearing other voices from the spirit world as well, or did that not come till later? Was it just a one-off?
Yeah, so it started the day after. And a year later, before my second NDE, I was lying in bed in the middle of the night, and all of a sudden I become aware. I couldn't see him then. Now I often see the spirit world mostly. But then I didn't see them. I just knew. And I was like, wow, my uncle is here. And he said, I have passed on. I've gone to the other side. I'm leaving. I'm just here to say goodbye and checking in. And it was my mom's brother. And I knew he had had lung cancer, but not that he would be passing away. Nobody had said anything. I think it was kind of a surprise that he did go at that time. And so the next day, I'm thinking, okay, my mom's going to call me and let me know her brother passed away. Nobody called. It's like, wow, this is so strange. Another day goes by. So this was the night from Sunday to Monday. Nobody called Monday. Nobody called Tuesday. Wednesday, my mom finally calls. So she's, doing the chit chat. How are you doing? How are the kids? Blah, blah, blah. And then she finally says, well, I have, some sad news to share. And I said, yes, your brother passed away 3 days ago. And it was just dead silence on the other side. She was like, how did you know that? And I said, he was here. So then she said, oh, wow, you're just like my mom. You're just like grandma. Because grandma always knew when people passed away. So, and I have memories too of my grandma when we were on this island. And she was so upset one day. I was probably only about 7. And she said, my friend so and so, I don't remember who it was, passed away at 2 a.m. because this bird flew into my window and told me. And I said, okay. And so we had to get in this little boat, this little rowboat with an outboarder motor and drive 15 minutes to an island and another island that actually had a payphone on it. And so that she could call her friend and get confirmation. And sure enough, she was absolutely right. But I think there was also more experiences that I never knew about because I was so little. My mom probably knew a lot more, but there's something in the family about that. But so the spirit world, came in. That mediumship started literally the day after my first NDE. I started here in the spirit world.
And you mentioned that there's electrical disturbances that occur. Is that when they're nearby?
So the watch story. So it was, let me think. So it was 9 months later. So I had put my watch on, um, during the fall. I think it was September or so, and it died after like 5 or 7 days. My watch stopped, and I was so mad because it's a watch. Now I don't have time. We didn't have cell phones back then, so now I didn't have a watch. But I also wasn't well enough to go get another watch, and I was like, well, I'll just wait, until I get well enough. Well, it was 9 months later. In March, I finally had the energy to put the kids in the car, drive to like the store, go inside. The watches were right inside the entrance. Picked out a watch, paid, and left. And I wore that watch for about 5 days, and it stopped. And I said, "Wow, it was so much work to get that watch." Because I was not well at all. It was when the bone marrow suppression kit was coming on. So I said, "All right, I'm going to wait a week or two." Then I went back, returned the watch, and the ladies, at that desk where you return things said, "Oh, that's so strange. We haven't gotten any other watches, but go ahead, pick out another watch." So I got the same watch, wore it for 5 days, and it stopped. Like, wow, bad luck. Must be some problem with quality control with this particular manufacturer. So went back a third time, and again, the ladies at the desk were, "Well, we haven't gotten any other watches back. That's really strange, but go ahead, pick out another watch." So I picked out a different brand this time because I thought there was definitely a manufacturing issue. So I pick out a different watch, different brand, wear it for 5 days, it stops. So then I tell my friend comes over with her kids, so my kids could have some playmates. And I tell her about the watch. And she looks at me and she goes, "It's not the watch, it's you, honey." So I was like, "What do you mean? It's me." So she says, "Well, you're the one that's killing the watches." So, but now, we know if you go to IN's International Association of Near Death Studies, there's a lot of research that has been done for a long time, and probably 50, 60 years. And a common problem is actually that the watches stop and people get sick. People get divorced within 7 years. Um, People have a hard time with loud noises and all these different things that have physiological and psychological issues that come after somebody has had a near death experience. And the watches is one of them. So it took me 12 years. So when my daughter was about 3, I had 16 or 17 watches in my drawer. I would just get a new watch. And then, so I started saving the watches. I said, well, you never know, they might start ticking again. So after a while, when the watch died, I would put it in the drawer, and I would always get a watch with a second hand, so I knew if it was working. So, wow, this one is ticking. Look at that. The second hand is moving again. So I would wear that, and I could wear it for about a week or two. So after after about 1 year, my watch lasted about a month. After 2 years, it lasted about 2 months. After 3 years, it lasted 3 months. And so it took me 12 years for my watch to take almost to the day 12 months. And at that point, I said, 12 years, that's it. My watch worked for a year, I'm healed. So, and that's when now I've heard the spirit world for 12 years, and I would get warnings about accidents. I saw my kids, I remotely had remote, remote, my kids almost got run over by a truck, and I saw it even though I was a half-hour car ride away. So they were in San Francisco, and I was in East Bay, San Francisco, where we at home in the house. And all of a sudden, I'm thinking, okay, well, the kids are going to be home in an hour or two. I should start prepping dinner. So my middle son was about 17, and my daughter was like 14. So he was driving now. And so he's in the car, he's driving, his girlfriend is in the front seat, and my daughter's in the back seat. So I'm walking to the kitchen, and all of a sudden, it's like I'm standing on the street in San Francisco. I see our car. I see my son waiting at a red light. He's trying to make a U-turn, and he's waiting for the light to go. He's going from yellow to red, and he's going to whip the car around before the other cars come. Well, he's waiting for that yellow red, and he says, "Okay, now I'm going to go because the other cars are stopping." Well, there's a truck that's coming in the opposite direction, and he's stopping. So the truck is accelerating to get through the light before it turns red instead of slowing down. My son is counting on that the truck's going to stop. So he whips the car around, but the truck isn't accelerating. So I see them turning around. I see my daughter getting flung in the back seat as he's just stepping on the gas pedal. And I mean, it's like an inch away. I see the truck like right behind our car. And I see them speeding down the street, and my heart is pounding. And I'm just sitting down, at the kitchen counter saying, "Oh my gosh, thank you, Spirit World. Thank you for saving them." And it took me like 10 minutes too before I could even start prepping dinner. I knew they were safe. I saw them speed off. And then, 2 hours later, they come home, and I knew they were really hungry. So I let them eat first. And as they finished their food, my daughter looks up at me and she says, "Mom, we almost got hit by a truck." And I look at them and I say, "Yeah, I know. I saw you on Embarcadero. You made a U-turn at the red light." And the kids' jaws just dropped.
Because they were
So
making
it's
up a story that they thought would be palatable to you, no doubt, being
right.
teenagers.
So it is, really fascinating how, we have so many abilities that, and, there's so many stories like that, especially moms knowing that their kids are going to be in danger, right? They see them in danger, or they know they're going to be in danger. So that interconnectedness, that grid that I saw, and how we are all connected to each other, and we're all connected up and out. I could not, that is exactly how things are working. And that's my work today is, to help people heal and help them understand why it is they're sick and how they're connected to their ancestors. As much as I would like to say we are individuals and we're not affected by our ancestors, And I'm not talking about DNA. I'm talking about their actions, reactions, and interactions with other people, their own trauma, their own emotional trauma. We are absolutely connected to that. And they actually even know that they see the DNA. They have done research on Holocaust survivors, and they can see now into the third generation, the grandchildren of those Holocaust survivors, that there's changes in the DNA, and they've identified some genes like the FKBP5 gene and some other genes. So they can see we actually transfer trauma via the DNA to our offspring. So those emotional issues that our grandparents had, grandfather served in the war, he thought he was going to die, all that, you're carrying that on your DNA. But also, we are connected through quantum physics because we are entangled through quantum physics. So the people that got the physics Nobel Prize last year, the three physicists that proved that two atoms meet, and then they separate the atoms. Whatever happens to atom A affects atom B, even though they're separated, right?
Mm.
So it's like, think of this. And then if the atoms have babies, they're also entangled. So if you have an apple, they meet the other apple. You put one apple in Australia, the other apple in Sweden. Whatever happens to apple A in Australia is going to affect apple B in Sweden. And that's how it is. We know that from all the intention experiments, like Lynn McTaggart's work, since that started back in 1980 or 1990. So we can see this. I mean, we can prove it scientifically. But what I'm doing as I work with that, with people with ancestral healing and the entanglement that we have with our ancestors. So it's fascinating because this happened in 1992 and 94, but it wasn't until basically, 2020 or 2018 or something that things finally started to make sense. So it always takes a long time for things to fall into place. You don't become a medium overnight, right? It takes years to develop it. It takes years of meditation, takes years of listening to the spirit world.
You mentioned something about when you crossed over into the spirit world after your NDE, that there was no time, but it took you many years to kind of wrap your head around that. What did you work out?
Right? So, oh my gosh, it drove me crazy. So I had the experience 1992 or 1994, right? And then we moved to San Francisco year 2000. And so it was in the early 2000s, between 2000 and 2004. And my kids were going to school in the city. So I was in the city every day. I had drove them to the city, and the San Francisco Public Library, which is a huge library, was 5 minutes from their school. So I would go to that library and look for anything, any information on that grid that I had seen, any information on time. I would read Stephen Hawking books on time. I would skip those crazy math calculations. It's like, I have no idea what you're talking about here. Skip that. Just give me the English text, please. Could not figure out, why is it that there's no time on the other side? But now, I mean, if you listen to the physicists, they're like, oh, there's no time on the other side. It's just an illusion, right? We have the illusion, just like we have an illusion that we are separate. When we come here to have this earthly experience, we're under the illusion that we're separate from our ancestors, and what they did, all the things they did wrong and treated people wrong, has nothing to do with us. I'm separate from them. No, we're not. And I work with people all over the world, but I think it's especially fun, when you work with somebody who's a psychotherapist, a physician, counselor, and then they say, like, I don't understand why I had this issue. And then you point something out and put all the pieces together for them, and they say, wow, I do this for other people, but I couldn't see it in my own life. But we're so entangled with, first of all, we have so many emotions about, our parents or siblings or however, raised us and the environment we were in and school issues growing up, that we can't quite see it and we can't put the things together. And it's not until you start looking at the whole family. Well, tell me about your grandparents. Tell me about your aunts and uncle, and who ran a business, who didn't treat their employees right. Oh, there it is. And you can see how these patterns of how other people were treated by somebody else in their family, but that is the burden they're carrying. It's absolutely fascinating because we're under the impression that we're completely separate and independent, and we're not related to these crazy relatives of ours. Everybody has crazy relatives. I have There is no such thing as a perfect family. Everybody has a crazy relative. Everybody has somebody in their family that when you were a little kid and you said, you know, What about Uncle Billy? Your mom turns to you and says, we don't talk about Uncle Billy. Right? It's like, oh, no, no, we're not bringing that up. Grandma's here now, right? And we sweep all those things under the carpet. And it's those unresolved issues of our ancestors that were swept under the carpet, the wrongdoings, the traumatic events that get swept under the carpet that nobody ever resolves. That's what gets passed down. But it doesn't mean, if you have a crazy family, there's a lot of trauma in your whole, like all your family. It doesn't mean you're carrying all of that. No, you picked like maybe three or four things out of that. Somebody else got another three or four things. I feel like it's a division. You're up there in the spirit world, and we say, all right, well, I need a life where I'm going to learn about these things. And you need a life where you need to have a mom like this, and I could be your mom and do that for you. And we write these soul contracts, and then we come down to earth and we have no memory of that. It's all gone. And then we just go through life and try to jump over the hurdles as they come along. But we're so connected to our ancestors, but we think, but it's an illusion. We're not.
Now,
Yeah.
at some point after your second NDE, something you must have decided that you were going to go to medical school. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So it was so after 12 years, right? My watch ticked for an entire 12 months. I'm like, that's it. I'm healed. And I knew that I was well enough. I could actually move on with my life. It had been a long, long time. So, I started like a kids quality toys business online back when there was no templates for making a website. You literally had to be a programmer to, I just read an HTML for dummies and then put it together in like a day, right? Because I had the coding experience. So it was easy for me to make that work. I literally started my business on a sample floppy drive.
Wow.
It's just software. And that's how I just, used that and started my business because I thought I was never going to be well. And in 2004, I was like, wow, I made it. Like I'm healed. And my kids were in the city at school, and I got on the computer and I said, when I go back to work, I can't go back to being a programmer systems analyst because now I was a completely different person. And I knew I had to work with healing people, and that was really my calling. And I had always wanted to do that. So I'm thinking, well, maybe there is some online degree I can do, build on my nutrition degree that I had gotten back in the 1980s. So I stumbled across this website, and it says naturopathic medical school, become a naturopathic doctor. They get trained in pharmaceuticals, they get trained in botanical medicine, acupuncture, homeopathy, supplements, nutrition. And it's like the whole holistic package. Then I realized it's a real medical school. I'm like, wow, that sounds really cool, but I can't do that. And there's only 5 of those medical schools in all the United States. I was like, it's a 4-year degree. It's a real medical school. You become a real doctor. And I mean, if I did it, I'm in my 40s now, right? So if I did it, there's no guarantee they would even accept me. And I got to do all the prereqs, biochemistry, like the chemistry, biology, physics, math, just to do the prereqs, right? So I can even apply. So I'm like, okay, fine. I'm closing the computer. I'll go start dinner and I'll look tomorrow. There's got to be something out there. So as I'm walking towards the kitchen, I become aware of the spirit world dropping in on me. So the spirit world says, you have to go to medical school and you have to be a doctor. And you have to come East and West. I'm like, okay, East and West, that's kind of naturopathic medicine, like old and new, kind of. And you're to write 2 books. No, wait, 3. And I also knew that, how am I supposed to do this? And they said, so they also said, you have to bring messages to the people. I'm like, Matt, what are you talking about? What am I supposed to write about? Like, I'm not thinking of myself as an author or a writer, never have. And then they say, bringing messages. I'm like, what messages? And they're like, don't worry about it. When the time is right, we will tell you. For now, just focus on getting your doctor degree because you need that degree for the work you're here to do. So after listening to the spirit world for 12 years, having gotten warned about accidents and people dying and people being sick, I mean, I could talk for hours, right, about all the different things that happened. And I said, okay. And within 2 weeks, I was enrolled. It was 2 weeks before the community college started. So I was enrolled within 2 weeks, and I had to start from the beginning because I was a business major as an undergraduate, so I didn't even have the biology. So I had to take advanced placement high school biology to get into the biology prereq class. So really, I had to start from the beginning. So I did all those classes and then applied to medical. I only applied to 2 schools and was accepted to both of them. And then started medical school when I was 54 and graduated when I was 58. And
Wow.
that is a journey. Um, and then as soon as I graduated, I went to, so it takes you 2 months. You take the board. You take the science boards 2 years after med school, and pretty much the same as the boards that the regular MDs take. It's all about the sciences, it's all about anatomy, biochemistry, and all that physiology. And then when you graduate, you take the clinical boards, and it's 3 days of exams, and it's just hours and hours of testing and reading cases and what are you going to do. You arrive at the scene and you have the 4 patients. This is one is doing you have a child that's vomiting and blah 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 is dehydrated. You got a woman that's screaming she's going to commit suicide, and you got somebody else who's doing something else. And you have to then and you can only read the question, look at the look at the answer, look at the multiple choice answers, select the ones. You basically only have time to read the question once because there's too many questions. You read it, you answer, you read it, you answer, and it's hours of testing. And so that they can see that you're using your knowledge and you're using your wisdom, right? So you're going to give that child the IV because that's the craziest, it's the most vulnerable. The young child, the 7-year-old that's dehydrated and vomited and had diarrhea in a car all night. So you know that child's going to go into shock in a second. So you're going to go with the child. So they check to make sure you can triage a situation and know which person needs help first, so you can save the most lives. So you do exams for 3 days. So I did all that, and then it literally takes. So the exams were the first week of August, and it's not the first week of October that you find out if you passed, because all the tests are given at the exact same time across all of the United States, so that there can be no cheating. And then they have to coordinate when they correct the test. So they're all different doctors that sit on these boards and write these questions. But sometimes it could be 2 answers that might be correct, right? And so then they have to throw that question out because they realize half of us answered A and the other half answered B, but both of those answers are actually correct depending on how you look at that situation. So then they have to throw those questions out, but they have to do it for the whole country, right? So it has to be graded exactly the same. So that's why it takes so long. So while I was waiting on getting my license, and I didn't even know if I'd passed my boards yet, I studied craniosacral therapy, and I meet this woman, and the class is in San Francisco, but I'm living in Arizona. And she says, we never got to work with each other, but we knew we both lived in Arizona. So I said, well, I'm like 2 hours outside Phoenix right now, working in a clinic, but I'm come down to Phoenix a lot for like conferences and stuff. So when I'm down there, let's have dinner. So we made up for dinner, and it's September. So I'm still waiting for my license. And she says, you know, um, and she's like a high position, like she's very well, super educated, this woman. And she says, amongst other things, I'm a medium. And I have somebody here who wants to like speak to you. And are you open to receive messages? And she says, all right. I said, okay. And I'm thinking, oh, this will be good. Like there's no way she's going to be able to know anything about me. I grew up in Europe, like, it's so different. Well, sure enough, she has my mom, and all these messages come through, and she says, "You have to go to Arthur Findlay College." And I'm like, "I can't go. I don't even have my license yet. I have to work. I just graduated. I need money, right?" I'm like living on nothing at this point. I just came out of med school. And she says, "No, she keeps saying you have to go to Arthur Findlay College." So after the third time, I said, "Okay, fine. I will go. I will figure out a way. I will get over there." Well, 6 months later, I was at Arthur Findlay College in England studying mediumship.
Wow.
And I had a reading with one of my teachers. And my teacher says, "Oh, your mother is here." And da 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 da. She knows everything about me. And I know it's my mom because, we're talking about fishing and, and the rowboats. So I knew it was my mom. And she said, "Oh, your mom tells me you're writing a book." And all I had was literally an outline of the chapters at that point. I was kind of trying to figure out what to write about and how to structure the book. And she said, "Oh, your mom says that you're to write 2 books. No, wait, 3." And so that was the exact same message that I had gotten in my living room, right? Walking to the kitchen in 2004. And I have gotten that message also from that friend that sent me to Arthur Findlay College. She also said, "Your mom is telling me you're writing a book. Oh, no, wait, 2. No, wait, 3. You're writing 2 books. No, wait, 3." That message, it keeps coming through. So I've gotten that message 4 times from 4 different mediums that didn't know anything about me. And it's always the same message. Yeah, you're to write a book. No, wait, you're writing 2 books. No, wait, 3. And it's always the same wording every single time. So I'm like, okay, I've written 1 book, so I got 2 more. So the next one kind of it's brewing in my head, and so I think that's going to probably start this year. And I had a reading with one of my teachers, Arthur Findlay, somebody who doesn't know me. I love having readings with people who don't know me. And it was right before Christmas, and she said, "You're writing a book." And I said, "Well, not yet. I haven't started it yet." And she goes, "Same thing. It's in your head." So it's brew. So that second book is brewing, but it's going to be it's going to build on the first book. The first book is about my near death experiences. It's about uh, the most embarrassing moment in my life, which is really funny. Um, and then the being on the airplane that fell out of the sky. It's one of those, like a airplane horror movie when everything flies through the cabin. I was on one of those flights.
Wow.
It was another moment when I thought I was going to die. And then it has just a lot of things that I learned, stories about how the spirituality came about, how shamanism came about, how do we tune into that other reality? How do we become more intuitive ourselves so we can tune into all this information that is readily available for us, but we don't know how to use that intuitive ability. So that's what I do in the book. I try to give a lot of examples of things and how it happened for me. And then each chapter has a little lesson at the end. So to easily incorporate into everybody's life and say, "Oh, I could do that. That's easy." Right. And sort of take them on that journey so that they can develop their own intuitive abilities and sort of tune into the spirit world by just kind of going through and how it happened for me. So the second book will be a deeper level of spirituality and healing and how we're all connected through time and space.
And if people want to ask you questions, Dr. Lottie, are you open to that? And what's the best way for them to do that?
So the best way to work with me is you go to drlottie.com, DRLOTTE.com, drlottie.com. And so I offer a lot of different sessions. I work as a medical medium or medical intuitive. I mean, I use my intuitive abilities, but I work with the spirit world all the time. It's not something that I cannot shut off at this point. I work with somebody, the spirit world is there. And so they work with me. So I work as a medical medium or medical intuitive, whatever you want to call it. And I work as remote health consultations to help people. Because I get a lot of people that they've been to the doctor, they've been around the block, and they tell them there's nothing wrong with you. And then they finally land on my screen and I'll say, "No, I know what you have. This is your problem. This is how you're going to fix it." So it's kind of fascinating because I feel like the spirit world sort of guides people. Like, go over here, she'll know how to help you. And then I do a really fun session that's called Messages from Your Spirit Guides. So have not been able to draw my whole life. And so I'm at Arthur Findlay College and they say, "Oh, you should take an art class. You can draw." And I'm like, "No, you don't understand. I can't draw. I've always wanted to know how to draw. I draw stick figures. Like, I cannot draw. I can't draw a dog or a bunny or a face. I don't know how to draw." And they're just, "No, you know how to draw." I don't know. So during the pandemic, Arthur Findlay College has a drawing class, like how to draw faces, draw the spirit world online. So I take this class during the pandemic. So she draws one face and we're trying to follow along. And she's like, "All right, that's it. Now I'm going to put you work with somebody else and you're going to draw one face. Now I'm supposed to draw a face." Well, of course you draw a face, but in 5 minutes, you've sketched out this face. You see what it looks like. It's just amazing. But that's the spirit world that's kind of working with you. Once you open your channels, you have so much more information available than you think you do. So I do this thing called Messages from Your Spirit Guides. And so I see the spirit guide. And so I sketch it, and it usually takes 5 or 6 minutes to get a sketch of that spirit guide on paper. And once I see the spirit guide, I know a lot about the client on the screen, because you're like a mirror image or a reflection of your spirit guide. So whatever the spirit guide tells me, okay, you have this kind of a spirit guide. I know you have let's say, well, the funniest one I think is, I had a warrior once. I got asked it's 3 times. I said, "A warrior, you're a spirit guide and you're a warrior? Am I hearing you correctly?" "Yes, I'm a warrior." I was like, "Okay." And I'm looking at the screen, and I have this petite looking man, and I'm thinking he's probably an accountant. He's got a warrior as a spirit guide. What is this? So I tell him, okay, well, the spirit guide says, he fights for justice. He fights for, you know, protecting people. And he's a warrior, but he's good intentions because he's doing the right thing. He can live in the woods for a week with just a knife, and he is a survival, blah, blah, blah. And he starts laughing. And the guy says, "I'm a retired police officer." And I still work like for justice and corruption and things like that. So it's really funny. I think that's the funniest one. If somebody has a monk, for example, I know if I see a monk, I know this person is on a spiritual journey. So I already know, okay, so you are very spiritual. You meditate all the time. You're trying to connect with the spirit world. Like, it just comes because if I see a monk, I know that that's a reflection of them. So it could be anything, right? So whatever it comes in, that spirit guide, you have a lot of spirit guides that come and go all the time, but you also have a main spirit guide that's with you all the time. And that main spirit guide is the one that comes in during that session. And it's always a reflection, the deeper reflection of what that person is here to do. Right. So they show me things. Sometimes people come to a crossroad and they don't know what, I'm tired of what I'm doing, but I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Am I even doing the right thing? And then the spirit guide might show me, like, "Oh, I see you. You're teaching people, you're guiding people, or you're counseling people, or you're healing people, or, whatever comes through." And then sure enough, that's exactly who they are. And that's exactly what they're drawn to. And so it sort of helps people get on the right track of what they incarnated to do. It's absolutely fascinating because, it's their spirit guide. But then we have spirit guides that come and go. If you're fixing your car, let's say you've never fixed a car before, you might have a spirit guide or a relative that was really good at fixing cars. And they come in and sort of gives you these little nudges, and you feel really smart because you're saying, now I know, I remember, I should do this, or I should try that. Right. But many times it comes from somewhere else. And when I wrote my book, I knew somebody was helping me. And because English is my second language. And sometimes I would be, how do you say this in English? And somebody was like downloading information. I didn't know who it was. And it was before I had only been to Arthur Findlay College once. So that whole mediumship was opening up and understanding who I was communicating with. And so I get to the Arthur Findlay College, and the teacher is reading me, and she says, "Oh, the spirit world says you're writing a book." And I said, "Yeah." And she says, "Somebody's helping you with that book in the spirit world." And I said, "Yes." "I don't know who it is." And she said, "Well, the person that's helping you is somebody," he said, "it's a man." He says he passed away too young, and he studied English in college, but he never worked with English. And I said, "I know who it is. It's my brother-in-law. He passed away in a car accident." And so I told his kid, my nieces, I said, "Hey, guess who helped me write my book? Your dad, in the
Wow.
spirit world." And he's the one, because he knew English so well, and and he was close. He was family members. It was easy maybe for him to connect and downloaded that information. So I would say, "Oh, that's how you express it." And I was like, he would give me the words, like, "No, use this word. That's how you express it." So it's really fascinating. We get help like this all the time, but we think, "Oh, that's just coming from somewhere." But maybe it's your spirit guide, or maybe it's a relative of yours that is actually helping you. But we don't see that because we don't believe in it. Like, I didn't believe in it. And so we sort of tune out and we think it's just us. But they're very actively helping us all the time.
Do you have a final message that you'd like to leave people with before we wrap up our conversation today?
Yes, I would say, we're all connected. We're all one. We're one human race. We're all in the same boat, riding this boat together. And everything is divine. And so is every listener on this show. we are a part of that divine grid and the divine experience that we have.
Thank you for that. It's been my absolute privilege and pleasure to have you today. Thanks very much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.